afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a live conversation with the Skyhook and Dazzle. I'm Irina, and I will be today interviewing with Janine. She's a head of developer relations at R3. And today we're going to interview Lawrence, founder and CEO of Skyhook, and Farzad, who is the CTO at Dazzle. And today we'll be focusing on discussions around capital markets and how Skyhook Capital and Dazzle are making digital securities more accessible for everyone. So, guys, who is on the chat here, if you could also tell where you're located now. Janine currently is in San Francisco, Faz and Mia in London, and Lawrence is in Singapore. And so we have like quite international team today. And please, if you have any questions during the interview, please put them in the chat. And after first 15 minutes, after Janine, Lawrence, and Faz discussions, I will read your questions. So you have a chance to ask any questions, and we will answer all of them. So please put them in the chat immediately, and after 15 minutes, I will ask all those questions. So, Lawrence, Faz, welcome to our interview, and thank you, Janine, for accepting and helping and doing the interview today. How are you today?
I am
very good.
Very well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's 11 p.m. here in San Francisco. Really excited to be here and being able to speak with luminaries in the blockchain industry. So
Lawrence and Faz, how did you start, and when did you start your business?
Well, maybe I'll start off first. Hi, Janine and Irina. Thanks for having us onto the program today. So, my background and really Skyhook Capital, which I founded in 2017, is really as a forerunner to that. I had other fintech companies that I had started to either invest in the early days. That's in the late 90s when the dot-com boom was going on. And then I founded my first company in 2005. That company's grown into one of the leading providers of wealth management technology in the Asia Pacific. And from that sort of understanding about what investors need and how they procure investment products through their various wealth service providers and how those providers support their businesses, I saw there was an opportunity to be able to provide a more seamless way of integrating digital securities into those existing channels, and that was really the genesis around founding Skyhook, and then effectively over the last 3 years putting together a platform with key solution partners that fulfills that requirement. Basically extends where I think the majority of platform providers sort of stop, and that is as a liquidity venue, offering sort of more of a trading interface as opposed to being able to integrate into a much larger ecosystem of wealth management services that are all sort of working across a very vast catalog of investment structures to select from. So really these are the pieces that we're bringing together in Skyhook under our platform we refer to as Skyhook DAWN, Digital Asset Wealth Network. And, along our journey, we had evaluated, one of the key benefits from a digital security over a conventional product is the ability to be able to settle these transactions in real time. That eliminates a huge amount of systemic risk in the system. Effectively, the reason why we had a global financial crisis in 2008 was all due to counterparty risk basically failing. So by eliminating that background, that sort of need, and being able to provide DVP, really we're creating a much more secure financial network to be able to distribute investment products and also through digital securitization, allow a new level of innovation to occur in the actual products themselves that are being issued. And we feel over time, given all of that, including the efficiencies involved when you compare a digital security to a conventional one, these.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. You can still hear me, right?
Lawrence? Yes.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Somehow, guys, I can't get the image back up for some reason. Let me switch cameras. Sorry about this.
This happened to me yesterday, by the way. And
really? Your video now?
Yeah, it happened to me yesterday. The Mac, once for some reason, if it just glitches on the camera, suddenly it just didn't want to go back without a restart for the.
It could be something wrong with the USB port.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
that's all right. Yeah. If you like, I mean.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead, Fuzz, and I'll fix my tech.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lawrence. Yes, so our company is called Lab 577, and the product is called Dazzle, Digital Asset Shared Ledger. It sits upon Corda, so we'll talk a lot about that later on. Basically, the company is founded by folks who've worked in financial services and investment banking for the last 20 years, and have also got backgrounds in industries like defense. So we come from a kind of a heritage of building industry grade, in some cases military grade software and systems. And we kind of spotted back in I guess it was about 2012 maybe, that the initial experiments on blockchain started and on DLTs started for us within our respective organizations. We thought that there was an incredible opportunity with the technology. It provided that degree of certainty that actually, if you kind of look at some of the predecessor systems, we were trying to build in those systems in the first place. And what Corda does is gives you kind of a standard and a working platform that's been really well tested for us to have cryptographic certainty, if you like, in transactions. So we set up Lab 577 back in 2018, and we've been working on Dazzle since then. Yep, so we met Lawrence. I can't remember where our head of sales, Miles, met Lawrence. I think it must have been one of maybe QuarterCon, or Lawrence, you'll probably know the details of that.
I think, yeah, that was, it could have been at a QuarterCon, or it would have been maybe even just a casual meeting through a LinkedIn connection. But yeah.
And so we've been working together on the design of the Dawn platform and how it would integrate with, and the provisioning of features in Dazzle to support that. And we can go into the details later in the talk then. Yeah.
And his camera is live.
Hey, camera's perfect.
Well, now I've had to. I think I actually had, as an amazing coincidence, a blowout on the camera, but I've now just flipped open the laptop, and I'll run with that for a while, guys.
I like the Pro mic, by the way. That's awesome. I have to get one of those.
Yeah, and it comes on a swivel as well, Fuzz.
That's what makes it Pro. That's awesome.
Yeah, you're fully prepared.
I'm back online. I do my own disaster recovery.
You did really well. Okay, so that's over back to you, Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much the origins. Actually, I do recall now. I was actually introduced to Dazzle team through actually one of the people at R3 Corda. So one of the things that I think you do very well at R3 is connect people. You know, your guys are obviously operating across all markets globally and looking out for companies that are doing interesting things. And, you know, sort of someone puts their hand up and tap you on the shoulder and says, hey, why don't you talk to these guys? They could have a component for your solution that, you know, is going to be highly advantageous. So yeah, I mean, so kudos to you people at R3. But yeah, I mean, we think collectively, you know, we've put together a platform that really is state of the market when it comes to being able to provide a seamless channel between being able to issue digital securities, you know, at the primary stage, then being able to get those distributed to a relevant marketplace, which is effectively high net worth and mass affluent investors initially, and then later on you'll see that extend into the retail segments. But what we're doing that's unique is that we're actually bringing those two ecosystems together, and we're building that bridge, and that provides a channel ultimately for business transformation to occur over the coming decade, where you'll see the actual financial service infrastructure globally migrate off the conventional models where we're using, you know, relational databases, Java J2E, you know, that type of tech infrastructure, and then start to infuse in that. It will never all be replaced. It will be infused in that the blockchain technology and the capabilities that it brings to the table in making that entire infrastructure far more efficient.
So Lawrence, you mentioned wealth management, and since like majority of our audience are developers, could you please elaborate more? What does it mean?
Well, I mean, and I think a lot of your developers probably already appreciate this, but the blockchain, you know, as a technology, the architecture behind it lends itself into doing things where, you know, it's quite common in financial services. So for example, if I have a financial product and I wish to issue a coupon payment because it's a bond each year, and that goes out to every investor that's subscribed to that bond, well, you know, if you've got your traditional systems, you've got to have a platform that goes through and is, you know, it requires a bit of work to create that workflow to make sure every one of those wallets, so to speak, gets a coupon payment into it. Generally, it will be obviously in the conventional world, an account held in a bank. In the blockchain world, you know, that coupon payment, whether it's going out to one person or 1 million people, it's effectively the same right? It's a broadcast of being able to, you know, update, you know, all of these wallets, and that's a major part of, you know, supporting and administering investment products. So it's these types of additional efficiencies. I mentioned DVP before. You know, not something easy to achieve using conventional architecture, especially when you want to be doing that across a whole network of banks. You know, if that could have been built, it would have been built by now. You know, we've lived with a financial services system up to a decade ago. It would still take you 2 days to send a payment from one country to another. When for the last 3 decades, you've been able to send an email to any individual instantly.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Corda, in Corda, you can do broadcasts. By default is peer-to-peer transactions, so point-to-point, and no one in the network knows about your transactions.
I think that's a really valuable point about Corda, because, and we use other technologies as well, but that's one of the key things about Corda is that it's privacy, it's controlled privacy. And that's fundamental, if you like, for the present, you know, our modern world of business. The way I think about Corda and maybe DLTs in general, and as Lawrence was saying, is that the sort of the API generation or the API revolution that happened pre-Corda, shall we say, that was fine for B2B point-to-point comms, but if you want to have anything which involves multiple parties, complying to the same protocols is really, really hard in the API world. The way I sort of think about blockchain and DLTs is a new generation of APIs, a new generation of protocols that unify the landscape of multiple businesses being able to interoperate with each other. It's been one of the sort of the driving visions, if you like, for Corda, I think, in my view.
You know, I think also, you know, one of the reasons that we were attracted to the R3 network, you know, that privacy and that ability to, you know, control the environment, I think is going to be quite critical, because banks, you know, there's a gradual process to how financial institutions, especially regulated bodies, think about when they extend their sort of firewall, so to speak. To give you a point in cases when cloud tech came out, you know, 20 plus years ago, you know, they weren't all rushing to jump onto public clouds, right? They were quite concerned about the idea that somehow your applications would be sharing services with somebody else's applications. And it took a while. They, of course, implemented private clouds within their infrastructure, and they prepared for the day when, you know, when I suppose the technology, the security, and the economies of scale meant that they had to move to a public cloud infrastructure to maintain competitiveness and to get their, you know, infrastructure costs down. I think you'll see the same when it plays out in the blockchain world. You've got, you know, will banks really want to be doing peer-to-peer trading over public blockchain networks? They'll get there, but they're going to take a bit of time to get there, because there's a whole new range of governance and operational risk issues to take into account. If it's a private network such as R3 Corda, it's a lot easier decision to be able to make.
Now, would you be able to walk us through the whole implementation, what the experience was like, and in the very beginning with your implementation and integration in Corda?
So when you're talking about building the Skyhook DAWN system in terms of how we approach that,
Yes.
yeah, I can. Do you want me to use any illustrations to do that, or do you think?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, let me, so I can just share that screen, I take it. Let me do that. Okay, has that become visible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just okay. So you know, this here really is to describe sort of a workflow of, you know, how the platform operates. What I may do is, before I talk about this, I will step back, maybe to provide a little bit more visualization for people that aren't familiar with the wealth management sort of process, and maybe just talk specifically about the overall supply chain end to end, to how financial products are distributed today in the marketplace. And really, it begins at the far left-hand side, where we have the wealth managers and their investors. So, you know, trillions of dollars, you know, in Asia alone, the amount of funds under management in high net worth portfolios across all the various wealth service providers, private banks, independent financial advisory firms, just in the high net worth segment, is about $20 trillion. And it's roughly the same when you look at Europe and also in the US. It's all around 20 trillion. Then you've got another sector below that, which we refer to as mass affluent. And those guys also, you know, buy investment products. They may not get the same type of service that a private banking client gets, because they're investing millions of dollars. Mass affluent may be investing hundreds of thousands of dollars. But in each case, these investors are all being serviced by effectively their either independent financial advisors or their their banks through their different arms. So it is here where decisions are made about what investment product am I going to buy to complement all my other investment products in my portfolio. And, you know, the middle block there talks about liquidity providers and exchange venues. So putting the whole digital security things aside, the way the market already works is that there are lots of liquidity providers or exchanges that you can connect to through these platforms to access shares, bonds, funds, whatever the investor wants. And you put all of that, each firm generally goes through the market and they look at all the different products out there, and the ones they like, they put onto their product catalog, and they regulate, they form that agreement with the party distributing it. So this is the model that already exists today. And at the origins of that model are the guys that are producing those investment products. Their funds, sell-side funds, you know, investment banks, companies that are raising capital and issuing bonds, mining companies that are looking to extract ore out of the ground and then go and basically do a private placement or even an IPO. So this is where, you know, this is the machine and how it operates today. What we saw is with digital securities, the machine was, a lot of people were focusing on origination of securities. You have to have products to have a starting point. And then what's happened now is we've had a lot of exchange venues pop up, you know, around major financial markets, Switzerland, as well as Australia, as well as Singapore, Hong Kong. So these venues is where they're trying to be the face to the market. They're trying to say to all those originators of securities, come and issue through my platform and I'll provide secondary trading for you. But the problem that those guys have is that their systems are standalone. I have to get an account on that exchange to go and basically buy their products. Then I've got a headache about how I get those products. I've got to record that into my portfolio along with everything else, which is all being managed in a nice, tidy, easy to use platform. Now it becomes a headache, right? To procure digital securities and try to manage those investment products alongside what you already have. So what we have done is we've simplified that. We've created a single platform that brings all that together so that from the investor's standpoint, they look at a digital product shelf. Those products on that product shelf, whether they're conventional, whether they're digital, in many parts is quite irrelevant to them. They're interested in one thing, and that is, how do I get a return on my portfolio relative to the risk I'm prepared to take? And that's where, you know, these decisions are made. There are tools in the background that are looking at the portfolio, looking at the investment products that are available and determining, should I buy that bond? I'm under allocated in bonds in my portfolio. However, across my investments, I'm quite heavily weighted in China industrials, and that bond is a bond being issued by a China industrial company. So no, that's not the right product because I'm over concentrated in a particular country by buying that product. So what it does is it looks at all products and then figures out on the merits of applicability and suitability to the portfolio. It makes that decision. So we integrate in all of that type of technology, and we provide that whole infrastructure to a Skyhook, to companies that wish to actually launch such a platform in the marketplace. Then what we do is we provide value-added services. So we provide a securities marketplace where we connect to all the various issuers and liquidity venues. We stack a global product shelf, which we can make available to the clients that are deploying that infrastructure. And we offer the additional services, such as being able to transact those products straight through using DVP by leveraging the capabilities of Dazzle, and also being able to stock those shelves, because we also are connected now to the R3 network with all the various products that are being issued over that platform. So we offer in the DAWN system, the ecosystem, a range of services that provides the complete workflow to support and integrate digital securities into the existing supply chain of financial product distribution. And we adopt a build as opposed to a buy as opposed to a build approach. In other words, we will partner with clients that have industrialized, productionized tech that's properly regulated, depending on what that piece needs to do, and is already available in the market. And we integrate that in together into DAWN. So we're not looking to build, we're looking to integrate. If you were to compare us with existing companies that have grown spectacularly today, we're like a MuleSoft, which is a company that provides infrastructure to allow enterprises to connect a whole range of enterprise applications together over the cloud to extract the synergies through that integration. We're doing that, but we're specialized. We're doing that within specifically the wealth management space, with the sole purpose of making accessibility to digital securities as seamless as possible from the buy side. And ultimately, this is what it looks like. I actually will hand over to Faz, because I think, although I have an engineering background, Faz has a far greater technology depth, and it will be, I think, far better for him to walk you through this.
Thanks, Lawrence. That was great. I think there's a few questions as well already popping up. So on the chat. So Janine, feel free to also moderate or queue those questions up when you would like to. I think you're on mute, by the way.
All right. You want to get started on the going through the slide, and then we can go through some questions?
Yeah, sure. So Dazzle, the way it kind of fits into this model really is that it starts off with, you just have to look at the life cycle of the process. So we have fund management and administration on the bottom right-hand side, which is involved in the, if you like, the definition and the issuance of the digital assets. And there's a lot that goes into that in itself. So there's an entire process involved in that, which results in typically kind of before the digital assets world, if you like, starts taking form, the generation of documents, legal agreements. There's a number of actors involved in that space. And where Dazzle kind of fits into that is that the digital asset definition has its own life cycle. It has the ability to be defined and appended to with additional documentation. It can have different parties that can review that. That documentation could be legals around the asset, any kind of market data analysis, and so on. This is the kind of thing that we can that Dazzle kind of provides, is that for that life cycle of the asset definition in the first place. And then the issuance process, we make a distinction, if you like, at this point between issuers and custodians. So there's a really rich model for issuers to delegate the custodianship of any underliers, for example, to custodians. So there's a kind of a rich detail of workflow, if you like, and capabilities in this space, on kind of the bottom right-hand side of it, of the diagram. So once that there's an arrow, if you like, that says issuance, and then the opposite side of that arrow is redemption. And that's where, again, Dazzle allows for taking, say, for example, fiat as an example, digitizing that, transferring it through the network, carrying out transactions with it, and then at the appropriate points in time where, let's say, a risk boundary is reached with the amount of assets being held in a digital form, you can request for a redemption. And where Dazzle fits into that picture is that it provides a solid, tested API and a set of providers or integrations with payment rails, so that the process of redemption can be done in a consistent and secure way. So we have integrations with various banks. You know, in the UK, we have integrations with banks like Clearbank, Incor, and anything which is essentially ISO 20022 compliant. Where it gets interesting with Dazzle is that our APIs are higher level up or a higher level above Corda, and the way that the integrations with payments providers happens isn't at the level of Kotlin or writing Java code. It's essentially you can plug in any provider using any kind of language that talks web, basically. So a lot of Dazzle, you know, its purpose is to provide a consistent web API to work with DLTs, specifically R3 Corda. So once the assets have been issued, there's a number of layers within the DAWN stack, which is related to working with primary issuance, portfolio analysis, and portfolio hedge risk management, and then secondary trading as well. So that's where the OMS part sort of fits in. And what Dazzle there does is to plug in with that stack to provide access to asset registries. So when assets are constructed or issued, the list of assets can be queried. If an asset has been defined with a registry option or a flag on it, then there is a time-wise database where you can see who held that asset during the life cycle of the asset, and that's useful for assets like bonds or equities where there's corporate actions involved, payment of dividends, payment of coupons, and so on. That's what the asset registry is really vital for. Assets also have the capacity for multiple observers to be applied on a permission basis. So an asset can be, there may be an issuer associated with an asset, a custodian associated with an asset, but where it's required, where it's appropriate, let's say we're in a regulatory domain where a regulator needs to be involved or a third-party reporter needs to be involved, an asset can be linked with a number of observers as well. So any high-level transactions can be filtered and then appropriately reported to those parties as well. So there's a lot of security that goes around with that, which probably is at this level of detail we can get. It's probably not appropriate, but there's a kind of an ecosystem of parties that can be associated with an asset. Then there's the one of the other facilities within Dazzle is the accounts aspect. So we build upon, so in Corda, for example, there is an accounts SDK, which I think a lot of people are aware of. It provides public key identities that allows for assets to be associated with those public keys. What Dazzle does is provides those accounting features that are expected and commensurate for any type of banking. So where there's metadata required for the asset, for the account, like what the name of the account happens to be, any kind of relationships with interlinking accounts to real world accounts, and tracking of transactions between bank accounts and digital accounts. That's one of the things that Dazzle does. It allows for reporting, and reporting not just at a single account level, but also the grouping of accounts, as let's say by any particular metadata field. So you can say, well, I want to generate my my reports of transactions against everything in the APAC region, for example, and you can group your accounts according to regions, boundaries that are sensible for your business. And that's something that's, you know, the work that we've done with Skyhook, it's been really useful to have that facility, that reporting facility there. And that's where it kind of fits in with the compliance and issuance aspects of the overall stack. Reporting is a very critical component of that. And then, as Lawrence mentioned earlier on, it's about the capability for what sometimes we call X for Y, or DVD, DVP, the ability to be able to exchange assets between parties. And where Dazzle really kind of adds to this is the capability for multi-party RFTs. An RFT could be generated by, let's say, an order management system for the exchange of a number of assets, and there can be multiple parties, in fact, actually involved in that single transaction. The same mechanism, as a result, could be used for netting, for example, multi-party netting, and I think that's quite a useful feature. I think what's interesting about Dazzle at this stage for this use case, but also in general, is that RFT and settlement are really kind of surface flows. And what drives that is a core engine. It's a universal finite state machine, as some of us engineers kind of call it, which allows us for defining any kind of multi-party, multi-step process that requires different stages of completion. So in the case of settlement or redemption, the act of doing so is divided into different steps. It starts off with one party requesting for redemption of a digital asset into their account. The custodian of that asset then clarifies and verifies that request and signals that that's a sound request. It's a valid request. It will look at the payments required and may break that payment up into multiple legs if they wish. One of our clients, for example, provides the option of either going via CHAPS or going via faster payments. With faster payments, there's a limit of 250K. So if you have a transaction that is for £1 million, then it will be broken up into 4 payments. And the tracking of those payment requests individually, that's all part of the asset finite state machine, the settlement finite state machine. And that's kind of an interesting side of what Dazzle provides in that regard. Yeah, so that sort of brings us into, I guess, I don't know if there's any, it's probably covered quite a lot, but I think some of that sort of aspect covers some of the features of the app platform. We've talked about tokenization, asset documentation, issuance, asset registries, accounts, transfers, RFTs. And the last part of that is escrows and conditional payments, where during any of these sort of transactions, there are phases where digital assets will need to be held in an escrow whilst the transaction is being carried out. And there are time and constraint guarantees that we provide in the system to ensure that the transaction is either fully completed, and that includes the interactions with, shall we say, the analog world of online banks, and the settlement in a cryptographic digital form. And that's quite a pluggable mechanism as well. So you can add new types of escrow and conditions in that process. After all this sort of discussion around features, there's really kind of the core part of what we provide as a company. Our background is in developing really military grade or battle tested systems. We take a lot of pride and pain to make sure that our systems have, first of all, stable APIs that are backwards compatible. We have an aggressive suite of regression tests to demonstrate that that's the case. There is a multitude of phases of integration and systemic testing, including failure and fault testing, to ensure that in the event of any outage, for example, for a cloud provider or a server or a cluster, that there's a guaranteed failover that works every time and it works smoothly, transparently. And there's a suite of performance tests as well to ensure that we're meeting our performance quality of service. So I've probably rattled through quite a lot there really quickly. I wanted to just give the broad spectrum of the things that we can do together and what we're doing with in our collaboration with Skyhook and the DAWN platform. I thought maybe I'd just hand it over to you if there's any questions.
Sure. So Samuel, thank you very much for all the questions you provided. More than happy to send you out a book that we have on mastering Corda. Shameless plug-in. We don't make any money off this, but oh, you can't see it in my background.
It's a great book.
Yeah, so Samuel, feel free to, those of you who post questions, feel free to ping me your address. More than happy to send you out a book. And his first question, do you think Corda has a big enough network effect to grow your digital asset catalog?
The answer in short is yes. I think you'll see that, right now there are three sort of key blockchains that have permeated the sort of the digital security world. First is Ethereum. Obviously, they came out with, various protocols to move towards that level of support. Second is the Hyperledger Fabric tech, largely being adopted by a lot of software technology companies in the already who are distributing conventional products, but they're using now the blockchain, using Hyperledger Fabric internally to effectively administer those products, to be able to do things like be able to distribute a coupon to a bond that they happen to distribute to a much wider audience. So they're the two, and then of course there's Corda, but Corda really has two purposes. There's the issuance side of it and supporting digital securities on the Corda network, and then on the other side of it there's the DVP, because I think Corda is at a different state of readiness than when you compare it to, say, Ethereum, which is more, I see, relying on the the proliferation of stablecoin technology, albeit ones that become semi-regulated at some level, ones that are being issued by sovereign central banks. But that seems to be a while away as well in terms of becoming mass adopted. So I think the integration into the banking network that Corda's achieved there, is something that will serve the market well. So on the issuance side, I think we already know of a number of well-positioned issuers, people that are, especially like in the bond market, for example. There are some fantastic platforms being developed on Corda. So we expect to get quite a bit of flow from within the bond sector. And then, there's a whole range of different types of investment products that are being worked by other issuers coming onto the Corda platform. But having said that, we expect that our product catalog will actually, behind it, will have products that are from both platforms that are sort of backed by Hyperledger Fabric, Ethereum, and then R3. But all of it we intend to be, we perceive to be settled through the R3 Corda network.
Yeah, exactly that. I think in terms of maturity and in terms of the privacy aspects, Corda has a much better story in this regard. For what it's worth, though, Dazzle's APIs are agnostic to the underlying ledger technology. So it's, when you're interfacing to Dazzle, and how this is one of the benefits really is that you don't really you aren't involved with it's completely agnostic. So the concept of accounts and the addressing of accounts, the assets and so on, it's abstracted at the level where we can plug in others. And right now we're testing the Ethereum bridge, which is one of the components there where we can teleport, and we call it teleportation. It's not I'm a bit of a Star Trek geek, so that's why it's called teleportation. We can teleport or wrap assets from one ledger to the other. But once anything goes into Ethereum right now, there's complete lack of privacy in a sense, and that's something that we have to be always aware of, and it really depends on business case to business case. And I think that Samuel also talked about. I hope that answers some of your questions, Samuel, but I think he also talked about DAML and VMware. So I've been following DAML for quite a while, and I'm quite close to some of the folks who work on it. I think it and there are others as well that are very elegant in defining contracts. I think there's some maturity that we look for before we, you know, when we're ready, we'll look into adopting some of that maybe as well. But it's the key thing for us is that we're compatible with the Corda ecosystem of contracts. So compatibility with tokens SDK, I think it's really crucial for assets that fit and work with token SDK. And I think that's where direct sort of connection to those contracts Corda apps is really important. And I'm not quite seeing that yet within the DAML and CSL space, if you like. It's another one. So hope that answers that.
There was a second part to Samuel's question. He also was questioning about, you know, there's more than DVP in terms of a risk within a transaction. And then, you know, how would that compare to, say, being able to verify ownership of the actual security itself? And really, when you look at the entire workflow, having either DVP or an easy verification of ownership of an asset in today's conventional networks, any one of those is a major advancement. When you put them together, which is what you can obviously achieve in a truly blockchain-driven, you know, administered securities network, you know, then you've got something extremely powerful, because now verification, as you enter into an exchange of investment products, to know that the person that your counterparty actually has the product, and then you can exchange it in a way where neither of you are at risk either through a DVP. You know, it's a tremendous achievement to be able to achieve, and it will basically change the landscape of how wealth management services are offered. You know, in the true blockchain world, you will have just networks of portfolios pretty much being managed by some AI-driven analytics platform with a specific investment theme in mind, working out how to basically exchange with other portfolios the products that they're holding. And then it just becomes a game of moving investment products directly peer-to-peer across a whole network of portfolios. Liquidity vendors, liquidity providers, exchanges don't necessarily need to exist in that environment.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that it gives some opportunities for. We've definitely seen some, interest from, I would say, traditional sources in the opportunities for algorithmic, if you like, liquidity pools, which provide almost fair rates or close to fair rates or market rates. And I think, you know, this is the kind of AMM and that sort of domain of things, if you like, the sort of automated market makers, if you like. And I think they're acting, there's also some benefits with using Corda in that regard, mainly because around the Ethereum space, there's a contention around front running and so on, whereas with R3 there isn't, with Corda there isn't. There is a certainty, and you can queue transactions in a way that allows for fairness. I think there's other points that Samuel's raising as well. Decentralization doesn't seem to be something that business people yet understand. So spawning new accounts under a single node, running everything in the cloud instead of proximal distribution. When will people get it such that they can make good decisions about how to actually distribute their software? The way we've kind of approached this, and I totally understand that perspective, there's a transition like any innovation in the market, where some folks are getting it a little bit sooner than others. And the way we're kind of approaching it with our design is that it looks and feels like regular accounts. It looks and feels like, you know, regular assets. It looks and feels like a regular API. But once you query that API, you realize actually you can see all these other parties on the network, and you can transact with them in a consistent way. We're trying to, you know, we leave the sort of the fancy stuff of DLT and blockchain and our digital contracts to the technical review. Usually there's a due diligence process always within large organizations where they look inside your tech and ask, how does it work? We kind of leave it for that stage in order for people to understand how the technology works. And we leave it to people like Lawrence, for example, and his team to explain the benefits of using a DLT or a blockchain approach. But we try to make it feel as natural as possible at the API level, so that it feels like a regular type of API that you're interacting with, but actually behind the scenes, you're working within this distributed network within Corda. You've got bridges and connectivity to payment rails and also to other networks, and that's all seamless. So that's seamless, consistent API is what we're trying to make it feel natural with. If that makes sense. Okay, cool.
There was a question there about in 10 years, it seems that multi-tiered Ethereum mainnet will be available with huge scalability. Talks about EMY backing that initiative. What do we think? There's a chance that our financial system in a decade will instead migrate to that ecosystem. There's definitely a big role for Ethereum to play, but in my experience, the world never moves just to one technology. I always talk about the rule of three. It almost seems to be something that is naturally occurring in a capitalist system, where there's a front runner, there's a close second, and there's someone tailing in third place, looking to keep the other two on their toes. If I gave you examples of that, you could talk about web browsers. Microsoft, Chrome, Fox, and Safari sort of hanging out there as well. In the area of phones, handheld devices, Android, iOS, and then somewhere behind is Microsoft platform. So, in terms of infrastructure and global adoption, when you get to that point, there's basically three players in that market space. So Ethereum will be big. I think unless something comes out of nowhere, and that can also happen, that is not on the radar yet, but it's certainly got a fairly good position in the market to become very much, the platform to basically issue over, but it won't be the only one. And it may not be the only payment network either. I imagine there's going to be a number of payment networks that will be up and running, because you're not going to be able to afford to have, even if it's infallible, no one's going to be comfortable just having one network handling all payments globally, because if that thing goes down, then we've got a huge problem. That becomes an operational risk at a global level. Yeah,
I totally concur, Lawrence, around there isn't going to be one ring to rule them all. The market always prefers a set, and the rule of three is great. I love that. It's very true. I think there's a lot of things to be proven with Ethereum too. I still think that there's a lot of tests and a period of time to figure out the bugs, and there will be some gotchas as well along the way where, as we've seen kind of before, with even from the early days of Bitcoin, for example, there's kind of hardening that needs to happen against those types of systems to make sure that they're secure. I think that there needs to be a fairly good, consistent story around side chains and sidechain protocols, and I think that kind of guarantees privacy as well, which is really kind of interesting space. But on the other hand, there is a kind of ease of adoption, if you like, with Ethereum, which I think will continue to allow it to grow even further. What we're seeing though is that the organizations that we work with, they really value the privacy of Corda, and therefore I don't think anyone wants to have this kind of a world where there's three technologies but they don't interoperate. Like in the days before we had the internet, you had like different providers like AOL and CompuServe, and everybody was like, well, which network should I be on? You know, because I need to pick the network that's got the maximum number of my clients, and that shouldn't be the case. We should interoperate across these different networks, and that's you know, a thesis for us, if you like, a principle for us as well.
We have 2 minutes left. I just wanted to get in a couple of more questions. So regarding the precious metals use case, how will the custodian facilitate the redemption of metals in the vault? I see an unavoidable friction at this level as someone has to facilitate the physical transfer.
Let me have a look. I just looking, I didn't get all of that. So what was the last part of that question?
So I see an unavoidable friction at this level as someone has to facilitate the physical transfer.
Well, no, not really, because let's take gold as an example. Now, there's an extremely well-established infrastructure globally for keeping gold technically offshore, not within any legal jurisdiction. So you have these free port custody platforms, and amongst those platforms, I can hold gold in custody in vaults linked on a sort of a physical network, so to speak, and move it around as I see fit. Now, the beauty about buying digital gold is that I can take ownership of gold in those vaults under a regulated fund, and I don't need to have that gold sitting in a vault necessarily in the country that I live in. The beauty is I can find ways to even exchange it at some point if I wanted to turn it into physical gold, which I could go and get out of some, you know, they were making at one point vending machines that allowed gold to be actually be issued at the, you know, the point of contact with the client base. So no, you don't need, you just need the legal structure that says, if I hold that token, then I own that piece of gold, no matter where it sits within the custodized institute network that is supporting that particular product.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't know about this question by Samuel, but unfortunately, time's up. Do you have any contact information of Farzad and Lawrence to share with the community? And we'll also send out an email as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, you can reach out to me. Just go to the Skyhook website. So www.skyhookcapital, right? One word, skyhookcapital.io. And there's a contact us there. Just reach out to me through that. Say, hey, Lawrence, I got a question or whatever. Others can reach out. Lawrence Grinceri, I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, I'm just posting some links here as well. Okay. Well, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. My goodness, the hour went by so quickly, and I've learned so much from this conversation, especially in the world of finance. So thank you so much. And for those of you interested in a book, please email us at education@r3.com. And we will be providing additional information, contact, and our newsletter following this event, as well as a copy of the recording.
That's brilliant. It's a great book, by the way. I do love
it. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for having us.